How long has it been? Oh, it's been a while. Hi, it's Jay Essen, and I'm about to play a game kind of outside of our usual routine. I have been working on a project lately in which I am working on an interactive fiction game of my own, and it's going pretty well, but it's turning out to be a lot more systems driven than I expected. So there's a lot of elements that have to uh, they're very driven by choices that the player makes. There are things that change cycles. There's a day night cycle, running date, and as the player makes decisions, they have resources that are affected. And while I have a lot of source code that is informing my approach to this game. There's one game in particular which I have not played in quite a while, but which I think is going to be useful, and so I wanted to revisit it. That game is The Exigent Seasons by Jason Love. This is a game that, let's just get into it. Quiz from a magazine, a bored friend, his notepad, his dice, and altogether too much time until the rest of your friends arrive. We'll go ahead and click play in browser. You're at Trev's place hours early, just like every week, and nobody else is here yet, just like every week. Trev's got his head stuck in a magazine. The new parapet just arrived. Seen this feature yet? He slides it your way. Let me grab some stuff. I'll quiz you. As he bounds up the stairs to the rest of his house, you take a look at the article's headline. The Exigent Seasons. How will you steer the autonomous city-state of Valdara? An analytical quiz by Jason Love exclusively for Parapet Monthly. Release 4, serial number 260307, Inform 7, version 10.1.2/D. For more information about the game, please type About at any time. Credits are also available. Press any key. Pre-gaming in Trev's basement. Trev isn't gone for more than a moment. He drops a notebook, a mechanical pencil, and his 10-sided die on the table between you before grabbing the magazine and collapsing back onto his sofa. He reads aloud, his voice taking on a more dramatic inflection. A difficult era approaches for Valdara, the city-state you govern on the coastal frontier. Fortunately, your advisors and ministers will not permit the destruction of your city. They have considered every possible calamity. Even now, with the first crisis not yet upon you, they prepare 2 avenues by which the emergency might be circumvented. He pauses to pick up his die. I've played this before, but it's been a very long time, and since some of the things that this game does seem relevant to the project I'm working on, I thought I would check it out again, and since I don't see much discussion of it, I thought I'd try playing it myself on the stream. So, let's examine me. You're a bit tired, a bit bored. It's unfortunate that you spend such a large part of your weekly get-together waiting for everyone to arrive. The hibernal crisis of the mutineers. Trev rolls his die, then compares his result to the large table making up the bulk of the article. He reads aloud. Snow coats the ground, the air is crisp and cold, but at least the days are bright. A trouble grows in the streets of Valdara. In truth, Valdara is a vassal state, and that means your citizens must sometimes serve in your suzerain's navies. Some of these citizens have apparently decided they'd rather not risk life and limb on the high seas, choosing instead to commandeer the ship they served on. These mutineers have just docked in your harbor, and, quite coincidentally, their overseers apparently did not survive the voyage. Your suzerain will not like this. The harbor master awaits your command. If you take the merciful path, you'll let the sailors go. Your suzerain will be furious, but it will help your relationship with the people. If you take the strict path, you'll make an example of these mutineers. The people won't like it, but it won't hurt your relationship with your suzerain. So tell me, which path will you take? Trav holds up a hand. If you hadn't already noticed, I'd like to officially warn you that this quiz is literally all I care about right now. I will not be taking any questions at this time. He grins. Let's examine him. He's focused, if not obsessed. You won't distract him short of simply leaving. Well, given these choices, I do feel as though our situation is a little precarious, and I have to say that while I don't want to upset the people, the country that's in charge of us seems more important, so I'll take the strict path. You tell Trev you'll take the strict path. He marks your choice on his notebook. The vernal crisis of the pox. The first crisis resolved, Trev rolls up another. Wherever the ground has thawed, new life now sprouts up. The days are growing warmer, and a new problem has arrived. An epidemic ravages the city. People are falling down dead in the streets. Your healers propose that the bodies be collected for study, although they warn that by doing so, more people will be exposed to the disease. It's a calculated risk. Will you allow this plague to worsen so that you can better survive those in the years to come? If you take the path of the pyre, you burn the bodies without learning anything. Health improves. If you take the path of the lab, more people die today, but more lives will be saved in the future. Trev stands up for a moment. While you think about that, let's have some music. He flips the switch on a speaker mounted over the stairs before settling back down on his sofa. During the break, a minor celebrity suggests you should be purchasing disposable cameras. Okay, so the decision we just made was not merciful. We took a strict path to secure our own position. This time around, I feel like we should balance our needs. So instead of doing something good for the long run, let's do something more immediately helpful. So let's take the path of the pyre to make sure that we don't lose too many people right now. You say you'll take the path of the pyre. Trev notes your response. The estival crisis of the squatters. The nights are awash in the cacophony of nocturnal life, but the days are long and hot. It's little wonder that the people have grown restive again. You've let your nobles' land acreage exceed their ability to manage it, and now they've got an infestation of squatters. Several dozen poor and homeless peasants have taken up residence in a number of unoccupied buildings. The nobles want your approval to drive out and or murder the squatters. The squatters want your approval to live rent-free on land you provided to someone else. If you take the path of nobility, your land grants will not be undermined, but you will appear repressive. Taking the path of peasantry will support Voldaran freedom at the expense of your own laws. Trev pauses for a moment. I should remind you that it sometimes takes me a moment to think of what I'd like to say, so you don't always have to answer it immediately. Well, let's think then. What a good idea. We wait? Time passes. Oh, you might want to make a note of what choices you're making so that you can pick the opposite options next time. Fair enough. Okay, so I know we chose the path of the pyre specifically because it seemed like an appropriate reaction after we were more repressive initially, but really, this is a more direct reflection of whether or not we're repressive, so this is the time we should take the path of the peasantry, and if we have something to improve our long-term prospects, we should take that in the future. So let's take peasantry. You tell Trev you'll take the path of peasantry. Trev notes your response. The autumnal crisis of the famine. Trev rolls again. Harvest time has returned. The forest blazes with color, but the people's hearts blaze with strife. Was it a bad harvest or bad storage? Whatever the case, the food supplies dwindled faster than expected this season, and the city is going hungry. Or it would be, except several noble... I just realized... Okay, yeah, my window is definitely cutting off. Let's see if we can fix that. If I... Okay, that's a little too much. Can we do that? That's still a little too narrow. Let's go like that. And just a little more. I'm normally configured for the formatting for Ryan's games, which is a little more permissive. This is just... looks like default formatting going on here. Okay, so now we'll scroll back down to where we were. So now that shouldn't cut off the text on the side of the screen. Okay. Okay, we have food supplies dwindling faster than expected this season, cities going hungry, or it would be, except several noble houses anticipated the issue, and they now sell grains and meats at exorbitant prices. The people are desperate for relief, but the nobles insist they are acting within the law. If you take the path of the bread box, the people will eat and be healthy, but those with wealth will avoid your city. If you take the path of the coin purse, the people will go hungry and suffer, but Valdara will be a place friendly to those with great wealth. During the break, a DJ commands listeners to start purchasing poured countertops. Well, we had a situation with the nobility here, and we supported the peasants that time around. This time around, we should go ahead and support those with wealth, correct? No. So path of the coin purse. You say you'll take the path of the coin purse. He marks your choice on his notebook. The festal crisis of the unblinking eye. Most of each day is lost in twilight. To stave off the cold and the dark, your people have turned to feasting, yet still the problems continue. Your constables formed an unofficial group called the Unblinking Eye to recognize and compensate your city's more reliable informants and turncoats. The Eye has grown into an effective tool to solve the city's problems through, and here Trev wiggles his fingers in scare quotes, extra-legal processes. Rumors about these so-called secret police accuse them of assassinations and disappearances, and the day has arrived when paranoid citizens are calling for the group's dissolution. If you take the path of blindness, you can dissolve the unblinking eye, spreading happiness at the expense of your control over what's going on in the streets. But if you instead take the path of vision, you empower the unblinking eye. Your control over the city will grow, as will the city's paranoia. From Trev's speaker, a drawling man considers purchasing spiced meat substitute. Well, we just made the people go hungry with our willingness to allow them to price gouge on food during a famine. So I guess let's swing back the other way and take blindness this time and dissolve this organization. You confirm that you'll take the path of blindness. The hibernal crisis of the pamphleteers. Trev rolls and looks up the next question. Snow coats the ground. The air is crisp and cold, but... Trev trails off for a moment to double-check the article. Wow, they didn't include any variable outcomes for the seasonal flavor text? They're just going to make me repeat myself? I'll just abbreviate on their behalf. Deep snow, bright days, you get the picture. An anarchist cult has begun circulating pamphlets urging citizens to oppose your rule and shirk their civic responsibilities. To their credit, they've actually started giving literacy classes since so many of their potential converts don't know how to read. Which is the greater danger, an uneducated populace or a populace critical of your rulership? If you take the path of ignorance, you will easily control a city full of fools. Or you could instead take the path of literacy, in which case your people will become more learned, but they will suspect and resist your rule. In the background, a spokesperson considers shopping for canned foods. Well, this seems like it's going to backfire, but we did just get rid of our secret police, so let's take the path of ignorance to offset that effect on our ability to control. You say you'll take the path of ignorance. The vernal crisis of daggers. Muddy plants and warmth. An alarming trend is spreading. Citizens have started to settle their quarrels with knives. Surprisingly few people have died, but finger loss is skyrocketing. Moral leaders call for an end to the bloodshed and beg you to intercede. If you take the path of safety, you'll cut down on knife wounds, but you'll seem a little more draconian. If you take the path of danger, you'll seem like a permissive ruler, but Valdara becomes a scarier place to live. A song by Wounded Isabel titled Squat Constellation plays. Okay, let's take the path of... We just supported the people and allowed them to become more foolish with the path of ignorance, so let's go ahead and now be a little more permissive. Since we have been controlling them, we've made them dumb, now let's make them hurt themselves. Take danger. You say you'll take the path of danger, and he nods. The estival crisis of the pauper riots. Trev looks up the next crisis. Folks are getting antsy in the summertime. The Valdaran poor are promoting a dangerous idea that noble titles and judges' regalia should be awarded at the whims of the masses. These vagabonds would have you survey the citizens before filling any public office, and the lesser nobles are rubbing their hands at the prospect. They would favor any measure to undermine their more powerful rivals, and so they've stirred up the paupers into a frenzy. If you take the autocratic path, you retain the power to appoint judges and nobles yourself, although civil unrest in Valdara will increase. If you instead take the democratic path, much of the populace will celebrate the idea of representative government, but you diminish your own power by doing so. The speaker plays A Shot to Send by Newton the High Twig. I feel like we're committing to a path here, having first made our people less educated, and then we made them less safe. I guess let's just go ahead and go all in on autocracy, and we'll take autocratic. You say you'll take the autocratic path, and he nods approvingly. The autumnal crisis of the disputed patronage. A wealthy noble has bequeathed all the gold coins in his estate to the Valdaran Conservatory of Learning and the Arts. Alas, the conservatory is an institution divided, and the conservators cannot agree which half of the institution more deserves to be the principal beneficiary. The rising tone of their dispute has culminated in your involvement. You shall decide the matter on their behalf. If you take the path of truth, the gold shall go toward research into practical matters and the development of new tools and techniques for their employment. If you take the path of beauty, the gold shall go toward funding cultural enrichment and the commission of new works and performances instead. This is all going on during weeks of beautiful fall weather, obviously. From Trev's speaker, some comedian talks about purchasing video editing software. Well, I know we've been going towards autocracy, but and the fitting thing to do in this case would be to take the path of beauty to give people circuses to go with their bread. But we denied them the bread in the first place, so let's go towards the path of truth instead. Take truth. You confirm that you'll take the path of truth. He marks your choice on his notebook. The festal crisis of the Forbidden Workshop. Trev looks up the last crisis. It's cold and wintry. Valdaran law forbids alchemical research into certain toxic or volatile substances. Despite this, a cabal of alchemists established a secret workshop in the heart of the city. Until an accidental explosion destroyed the laboratory and the adjacent buildings, the alchemists hope to buy their way back into your good graces. Though their formulas are lost, they can reproduce their explosive compound for you, and more besides. If you take the path of discovery, the alchemist's crime is forgiven in the name of alchemical learning and progress. If you take the path of justice, the law against illegal alchemy is enforced, and the criminal alchemists are punished. The speaker plays Opalescent Jewel by The Thighs. Let's establish absolute rule of law. Let's go ahead and take the path of justice. You say you'll take the path of justice. The exigencies have ended. Trev flips a page. Through this crucible of crises, you have melted down your civilization and forged it anew in your own image. There is but one final path to take. He rolls his eyes. I'm going to tabulate these results while you take your final path, I guess. Take final path? Trev finishes his math and looks up your ending. The Age of Villainy. Trev reads the ending. Which is the greater crime, the lesser indignities and greater horrors that you inflicted on your people, or the simple fact that you could get away with such malice for so long? Your rule is overthrown in the end by careful coordination among your citizens, but your villainy is long and fruitful before that happens. This was ending number 10, with a score of 2,025 points. Your score has just gone up by 1 point. I never looked. I don't have inventory, do I? All your stuff's upstairs until the rest of the group arrives. Can we look? Physically, you're in Trev's basement game room. Conceptually, you're in some advisory chamber in the Palace of Valdara, weighing your options and considering how your choices shape your state's future. So now you've had a taste of how this works. You pick a path 10 times, I tell you what ending you get. Simple, right? Trev barely pauses before answering his own question. Wrong! This article lists 33 possible future outcomes. 33! How do you make that many outcomes meaningfully distinct? More importantly, how do you make each such outcome a logical result of the paths that your readers choose? I don't think they could pull that off. That's what I'd like to investigate with you today. Let's thoroughly explore this quiz. I want to see how many endings we can get before you get bored and wander away. The hibernal crisis of the pox revisited. Let's mix things up a bit. He rolls again. We're starting again in the second half of winter. Do you let the pox get worse so that you know how to fight it next time? If you take the path of the lab, more people die today, but more lives will be saved in the future. If you take the path of the pyre, you burn the bodies without learning anything. Health improves. Oh, I hope you don't mind that I'm abbreviating the crisis descriptions. The flavor text seems unnecessary. Trev, that's an excellent point. I think I'll follow your lead. Let's try and be benevolent rulers this time. Let's take lab for our long-term health. It's spring. Where do you stand on landlord-tenant disagreements? If you take the path of nobility, your land grants will not be undermined, but you will appear repressive. Taking the path of peasantry will support Voldaran freedom at the expense of your own laws. You glance over just in time to catch Trev yawning. We'll take peasantry this time, since we're being benevolent. You say you'll take the path of peasantry. He marks it down. Noisy nights and hot summer days. How do you feel about secret police? If you take the path of blindness, you can dissolve the unblinking eye, spreading happiness at the expense of your control over what's going on in the streets. But if you instead take the path of vision, you empower the unblinking eye, your control over the city will grow, as will the city's paranoia. Trev scratches his chin. Do you think Valdara is an actual campaign setting? Seems like a pretty generic low magic setting, though I suppose the quiz only gives us a narrow glimpse at how it works. We're going to go ahead and take blindness here, because again, we're being benevolent. It's autumn. Who wins the inheritance in the battle of art versus science? If you take the path of beauty, the gold shall go toward funding cultural enrichment and the commission of new works and performances. If you take the path of truth, the gold shall go toward research into practical matters and the development of new tools and techniques for their employment instead. From the speaker, a precocious child commands listeners to start investing in reusable television covers. Let's go beauty this time around. So, do you think winter causes so many problems that they had to double the number of events for just this season, or are Valdara's 2 winters distinct enough to qualify as separate seasons? Whichever it is, this is the first winter crisis. It's the anarchist teacher's crisis. If you take the path of ignorance, you will control a city full of fools, or you could instead take the path of literacy, in which case your people will become more learned, but they will suspect and resist your rule. A song by the Unfolding Lips titled Frog of Chipped Teas plays. These songs are not being generated very well. Let's take literacy. The hibernal crisis of the pauper rights revisited. Late winter. Are you going to undermine your control over the city by giving the people a chance at democracy? If you take autocratic, you retain power, although civil unrest increases. If you take democratic path, much of the populace will celebrate the idea, but you diminish your own power by doing so. Radio plays Grey Dancer by Andrea Ratzinger. Let's go democratic. Trev seems lost in the magazine for a moment. Just when you're about to say something, he rolls his die. Spring. How do you feel about price gouging food when people are starving? If you take the path of the bread box, the people will eat and be healthy, but those with wealth will avoid your city. If you take the path of the coin purse, the people will go hungry and suffer, but Voldar will be a place friendly to those with great wealth. The speaker plays Frosted Monitor by Nathan and the Shots. We're going with bread box here. Summer. Are you going to stop the people from cutting each other up to settle grudges? Safety cuts down on knife wounds. Danger is permissive, but it becomes scary. We're obviously going safety here. Because we're not being permissive, we're being benevolent. Subtle distinction, I think. We are doing the one about the illegal explosive alchemists. If you take the path of discovery, their crime is forgiven. If you take the path of justice, the law is enforced. We'll go with discovery. A car honks somewhere. We go discovery. Trev looks up the last crisis. It's cold and wintry. What are you doing with the mutinous sailors? We're being merciful, obviously. On the radio, a spokesperson asks you to start buying tube socks. Trev flips to the results page and starts adding up your answers. Nothing to do now, but wait. Trev finishes his math and looks up your ending. The era of the distant stars. Trev reads the ending. To escape the crises besetting your city, you lead your people to the nomadic life. Though scattered stragglers remained in their ravaged city, Valdara was no longer a singular place. It was a name invoked whenever your followers' paths crossed, or when the fisherfolk lashed their raft homes into a brief settlement upon the waves. Your leadership passed from terrestrial affairs to mysticism and myth, and while foreign powers would one day clear away your ruins and rebuild, your name would be whispered in distant lands for centuries to come. This was ending number 22, with a score of 2,410 points, and it happens to be my personal favorite. Your score has just gone up by 1 point. That's nice. We go score 2 out of a possible 33 in 29 turns. We go full score. You reviewed 2 endings out of a possible 33 before you embarked on your final path. Those endings include The Age of Villainy and The Era of the Distant Stars. Let's wait again. Let's try something different this time. I'm still going to ask you to make the selections, but I may sometimes recommend which path I think you should take. Saying this, Trev starts a new column on his notebook. Late winter. Are you going to undermine your control over the city by giving the people a chance at democracy? You can take democratic or autocratic. I think you should take the second path for this crisis. Remember, though, it's up to you whether you go along with this. So, autocratic, according to Trev. Spring. What are you going to do with the mutinous sailors? If you take the merciful path, we'll let him go, but the suzerain doesn't like it. We can go strict to make an example of them. He did not say anything. Time passes. A car door slams outside somewhere. Trev taps his foot. Trev thinks for a moment. I think I'd pick the first path for this situation. Let's take merciful, then. You say you'll take the merciful path. Summer. Who wins the inheritance in the battle of art versus science? We've got Path of Truth and Path of Beauty. I've got to go with the first path again. Let's take Truth, then. You say you'll take the Path of Truth. He marks your choice. Autumn. How do you feel about secret police? We've got the Path of Blindness to dissolve the secret police, or the Path of Vision to empower them. I prefer the second path this time, personally. We'll take Vision. Here's the pamphleteers. It's the anarchist teacher's crisis. If you take the path of literacy, your people will become more learned, but they will suspect and resist your rule. Or you could instead take the path of ignorance, in which case you will easily control a city full of fools. I don't like either of these options. I think you should take neither path this time. Okay, we'll take neither then. You tell Trev you'll take neither path, and he nods. Late winter. Price gouging when people are starving. Path of the bread box to give food out. Coin purse to enrich people. We wait for what he says. Trev lists both index fingers. Path 1. Path 1 is best. We'll do bread box then. The vernal crisis of the pox revisited. We've got the laboratory to learn at the expense of health, or the pyre to burn the bodies. Trev doesn't say anything further. He just mouths the word one while holding up his single finger. Does that work? That's not a verb I recognize. Let's take first. Nope, take lab. You confirm that you'll take the path of the lab. Summer, landlord-tenant disagreements. Peasantry supports freedom. Nobility is kicking the squatters out. Again, I like the first path more. We'll go peasantry. Here is the daggers. We're playing knifey handy again. We'll do path of danger or path of safety. He says he favors path number 2 for this crisis. We'll take safety. I wonder if this is just going to be the distant stars again. And the Festal Crisis of the Forbidden Workshop, we're doing Path of Discovery versus the Path of Justice, and path number 1 is his preference, so we go with Discovery. We wait. Oh, this is different. Trev finishes his math and looks up your ending. The Era of Excommunication. Trev announces, you had no faith in Valdarna nobility or military, so you turned instead to religion. The church you founded gave the people hope and happiness, but more importantly, it gave you the power to ostracize or banish those you suspected of plotting against you. Valdaran society was consumed by influence peddling, intrigue, and outright extortion during this era. You ruled for decades, but your eventual capture and trial for heresy and blasphemy was essentially inevitable. This was ending number 25 with a score of 2,405 points. Your score has just gone up by 1 point. Okay, that's interesting. So something that I took away from that route is we have the option to take neither path. What if we just do that? Trev shakes out his writing hand. I'm getting a good sense for how this works, but I need more data. We must collect more endings. So this is Crisis of the Pox. I'm going to take neither. Here's the Pauper Riots. An ad break on the radio. A quiet voice suggests you should be buying memory foam athletic shoes. Take neither. Here's the Forbidden Workshop. The speaker plays The Shuffle of the Wordy by Tall Wendy. Take neither. Pamphleteers. Take neither. Which he marks with mock disapproval. The Unblinking Eye. You seldom notice Trev's central air system while it's running, but it catches you off guard whenever it starts up or shuts down, as it's doing now. Air stops blowing from the vents. We'll take neither. Mutineers. The central air vents rumble to life once more. We take neither. And now we're back at the daggers. Trevor's waiting. We take neither. Here's the Squatters. From the radio, a familiar voice you can't quite place exhorts you to start purchasing discount auto insurance. Take neither. And the Disputed Patronage. Actually, hold on a moment. Trev rubs at the page with his eraser. I marked that last one wrong. Well, you might be surprised by this. I don't know why you would have written one wrong since I've given the same answer every time. It's take neither. And finally, we have the Crisis of the Famine revisited. The Ceiling Creeks. Take neither. He flips the results page. Trev finishes his math and looks up your ending. The Time of the Empty Throne. Trev reads, during Valdara's times of crisis, you shrugged and turned away. Any philosophy you may have proclaimed was drowned out by the city's heedless cries for your attention. You were too distant for too long. In the end, the Valdaran people sneered at your neglectful rule, so it should come as little surprise that they would take matters into their own hands as soon as the opportunity presented itself. Congratulations! You brought about a Valdaran revolution and had to flee the city. It's possible you were murdered in secret. The history books do not say. This was ending number 32 with a score of 2,532 points. Okay. Trav marked off your ending and starts over again. I may have mentioned this before, but this quiz is set up so you can ignore a crisis altogether by taking neither path. I don't think you can get every ending unless you use this technique. Oh, way ahead of you there, buddy. Let's go ahead and just take the first path each time. Let's go with Merciful. Let's go with Vision. Let's go with Discovery. Let's go with Breadbox. Lab, Peasantry, Truth, Ignorance, Democratic, and Danger. This time around, we got the Learned Seasons. Travis says aloud, they called your reign the Learned Seasons as you elevated education as the most important ideal. But to what end? Knowledge for its own sake and nothing beyond is self-gratifying purposelessness. The applause of scholars is not sufficient to maintain civilization. At least you knew enough to see the end approaching, and though your city was overthrown, perhaps you outlived its fall. The historians are uncertain. This was ending number 2 with a score of 1,813 points. Let's see if I can get one of the other endings. I've got a pretty good grasp for how all this works now. Feel free to ask me for hints if you'd like help getting new endings. As he says this, Trev has marked off your latest ending. Let's ask for a hint. Trev reviews the endings you haven't yet obtained to provide you with an appropriate hint. To increase education and learning, you have to make certain selections in 4 different crises: the Pamphleteers, the Pox, the Disputed Patronage, and the Forbidden Workshop. Is that not what we just did? I think that's what I just did, actually. Oh, interesting. There are 4 chances to maximize your personal control and security. These chances are during the Unblinking Eye, the Pauper Riots, the Mutineers, and the Pamphleteers. Let's see if we can do that one. This is daggers, so it's neither. This is disputed patronage, so it's neither. Okay, pamphleteers. We are trying to maximize personal control and security. Path literacy, so we take ignorance here. For a moment, there's a slight ringing in your ears. Okay, mutineers is another one. Merciful is not helping our control. We need to take the strict path. Squatters is not one. The other two are Unblinking Eye and Pauper Riots. So neither. Unblinking Eye, we want the path of vision. And neither. Pauper Riots. Here we take autocratic. The exigencies have ended. Trev flips to the results page and starts adding up your answers. Nothing to do now, but wait. The tyrannical seasons. You held on to power at the expense of everything else. Your citizens cursed your name. Your neighboring sovereigns found you worrisome. Even the suzerain state considered your ambition dangerous, and so they saw fit to separate you from your position. But your power was sufficient to guarantee your escape. As much as we'd like to give you a poetic comeuppance, you lived to a ripe old age in relative luxury, far from the halls of power. This was ending number 3 with a score of 2,414 points. Okay. We did one for our own personal power. We did one for learning. Maybe we can do one for the people? Let's see. Hi, buddy. Another outcome marked in Trev's notebook. He twirls his pencil with a flourish. I don't know whether this info will help you, but when I'm scoring your answers, the possible endings are sorted into groups. First, there's a group of 5 endings, then a group of 10, then another group of 10, then another group of 5, and finally, there are 3 endings sort of off by themselves. Oh, interesting. Apropos of nothing in particular, Trev adds, don't forget, you can ask me for a clue like this one. One ending requires you to give the people joy. How do you think you could best accomplish that? That's kind of what I was actually going for. So we're going to go with Valdaran Freedom. I don't think this actually is... Is freedom equivalent to happiness? Maybe it is. Let's go ahead and take peasantry, just to be safe. We've got the Unblinking Eye... Can dissolve the Unblinking Eye, spreading happiness. Okay, so that's one we definitely want to do. We want to do blindness. Danger will seem permissive. Here's a comment. I feel like this guy meant for these crisis events to present 2 equally appealing or unappealing options, but I'm not too sure how well he pulled it off. Some of these paths seem obviously superior to the alternative. I'm having trouble reading right now because I have a cat standing right in front of the monitor. He is really eager for some attention right now. Let's take... we don't want to be draconian. I don't think this is... I think we take neither in this case. We've got pamphleteers. Ignorance, easily control a city full of fools, or literacy, in which case people will become more learned, but they will suspect and resist. Neither one of these seems to really... affect happiness. We're going to take neither. We've got people going hungry with the path of the coin purse. Bread box will eat and be healthy, but those with wealth will avoid your city. Is health equal to happiness? Let's say it is. I'm going to take bread box. Hybridal Crisis of the Forbidden Workshop. Neither one of this seems really relevant. We're going to take neither. Disputed Patronage. I think Beauty probably goes here. And then We've got the path of the pyre and the path of the lab. This is health. I'm not sure health actually is the same as happiness, so I'm going to take neither here. Finally, we want to help our relationship with the people, so let's take merciful here. And Trev looks up the last crisis. Early winter. Are you going to undermine your control over the city by giving the people a chance at democracy? This crisis asks whether you give up on your own power to benefit the city, strength of the city's laws, or whether you weaken civil order to keep your own position secure. I'm guessing that over the long run, neither one of these approaches would represent a successful strategy, which is why it feels like this quiz should have been 2 or 3 times as long. Would you consistently pick one value over another, or would you land somewhere in the middle, perhaps more organically than by just choosing neither path over and over again? That's a great question. I'm not sure how relevant or helpful it is. And I've got a cat torso right blocking my view. Populace will celebrate. I'm saying we go democratic. Democratic. Okay. And that was last. The Age of Embers. Trev finishes his math, looks up your ending. Trev says aloud, the Age of Embers is an era of mob-based rule. Mob is in pitchforks and torches rather than organized crime. You empowered the people, gave political weight to their freedoms, and they in turn burned down those institutions that failed to support their populist goals. It was not an especially fair time, nor an enlightened time, nor a time of great Voldaran accomplishment, but most of the people loved you for it, and your hands-off rule lasted far longer than any of your critics would have guessed. This was ending number 12 with a score of something with cat in the way. Okay, so let's see what else we've got. John, I need you to move, buddy. I need you to move away from there. Okay. Okay. How are you holding up? If you'd rather, we could try reading the endings directly. Just tell me to cheat and I'll pick a random ending to read. Trev marks down your ending with a shrug. Okay. So something I've looked at some of the source code for this, and there is like this kind of cheating, just you get an ending immediately. But that is something he doesn't approve of. But there's another kind of cheating available if you know a magic word like this one. Trev stops you. You've just said the magic word. It's not an official part of the article, but I have this plastic sheet that I can lay on top of the text to add some color coding to the quiz. This will make it easier to choose paths for the purpose of achieving a particular ending, but it might also ruin the magic a little bit. Once you see how this is all put together, it's kind of hard to unsee that. Say the magic word again, and I'll augment the text with these added color words. Say it a third time, and I'll remove the sheet and go back to normal, and so on. Okay, let's go ahead and say the magic word again. Trev raises his eyebrows but says nothing. He removes a transparent overlay from the back of the magazine and settles it over the page. So up here, we can see the crisis, the hibernal crisis of the Squatters Revisited, red/white. As basically, there are 5 variables that we are affecting with these choices, and each of those variables has an associated color. And so the endings are different mixes of the colors that we attained in sufficient quantity to basically contribute to the overall picture. So this is a choice. Do we want the city to be more red or do we want the city to be more white? Let's talk to Trev. Trevor repeats himself. Where do you stand on landlord-tenant disagreements? If you take the path of peasantry, you will support Voldaran freedom at the expense of your own laws. Taking the path of nobility will prevent your land grants from being undermined, but you will appear repressive. Or to put it another way, which path will you take, red or white? Trev wonders which path you're going to take. Now that we have this enabled, let's go with red. You say you'll take the path of peasantry. The Vernal Crisis of the Forbidden Workshop, this is blue and white. This, if we're going to go, let's go for a red ending, and we can ignore anything that is not red. So we take neither here. We will take red in the path of daggers, which is the path of danger. Unblinking eye, the red choice is apparently the path of blindness. Disputed patronage, red choice is the path of beauty. How do you feel about price gouging food when people are starving? You can increase public happiness and health by choosing food, while you can increase civic order by choosing coin. He shrugs. White or green? We take neither. Spring, what are you going to do with the mutinous sailors? Letting the sailors go will increase public happiness, but surprisingly enough, it has no impact either way on lawfulness or lawlessness. I guess the suzerain state put you in power over Valdara because you'll hurt the security of your position by letting them go. Let's take neither, because these are neither red. They're green and black. We have blue and green. We take neither. We take neither here. Early winter. It's the anarchist teacher's crisis. This one's so ridiculous. I love it. Obviously, we're weighing your interest here in holding on to power versus educating your populace, but this cult of secret readers just has no subtlety whatsoever. This is a black-blue choice, so we take neither. So, the seasons of lawlessness. You gave the people freedom, and they thanked you with chaos. Although the exigent seasons had ended, Valdara slipped into a twilight of lawlessness and decline. Your own household plotted against you, and your reign was cut short by a poisoned blade. At least you'll live on in the history books as an example of how not to rule. This was ending number 4 with a score of 2,416 points. Now, we can do the opposite of that and get a non-red ending by taking opposite of red any chance we can. So here is white and green. We take neither again. Red, black. This time we take black. White, black. We take neither. Green, red. We take green. Green, blue is neither. White, blue is also neither. Blue, black is neither. Who wins in the inheritance in the battle of art versus science? Okay, this one took me a while. The path of truth is obviously going to benefit education, right? So what does the path of beauty get us? Well, it increases civic freedom, obviously. The way Trev says this makes you think it is not actually all that obvious. I guess art is standing in for freedom of expression in this situation. Did I already mention how I feel like some of these dilemmas are poorly constructed? If you take the path of truth, the gold shall go toward research into practical matters. It's red or blue, so we take blue this time around. And red or white, we'll take white. Green or black, we take neither. So, this is an ending that is green, white, blue, and black, or the seasons of new growth. Trev reads the ending. You laid out a plan to grow the city. It was simple, logical, and effective. It would provide everything the city needed. Alas, then, that the impressionable masses fall victim to charismatic charlatans. One such individual whispered a few persuasive arguments in the right ears before stirring up the populace, and your simple, logical, and effective plans were forgotten in the face of exciting promises and fiery rhetoric. You were replaced by a worse ruler, and though this fact was obvious to many, this injustice would not be righted in your lifetime. This was ending number 30 with a score of 2267 points. So how are we doing so far? We've gotten 9 endings so far. There's 33 of these things. I am tempted to just go ahead and... Let's go ahead and just cheat our way, because I'm getting hungry. Okay, we've been doing this for a while. I guess there's no harm in cheating a little. Trev reads the description of a random, unseen ending. Green or white, the bountiful age. Your administration followed the time of crisis with a plan to reorganize society. You put your people's needs first, and you revised your laws to ensure those needs would be satisfied. The bountiful age that followed was one of growth and prosperity. That's not to say it was perfect. The occasional radical might try to spread dissent, but impassioned individuals couldn't do much to budge the prosperous majority you'd empowered. This was ending number 14 with a score of 20 points. Trev draws a tally mark in his notebook. Oh, here's an idea. The Renaissance requires both learning and dynamism. Well, that's going to be red-blue, so let's take neither, since we're on a Crisis of White and Black. This is green or black, so we take neither here. We take red here, red here, red here, blue here, blue and red. We can take neither. Blue here and neither. Blue here. Blue-red, the age of ingenuity. Trev proclaims your outcome with dramatic flair. By giving everyday citizens the freedom to study and invent new ways of thinking, you brought about a Valdaran renaissance. Artists and thinkers flocked to the city, and while you did have to deal with the occasional populist and moralist uprisings that castigated you for your apparent abandonment of Valdaran traditions, it was otherwise a rewarding time to be alive. This was ending number 9 with a score of 2,424 points. Let's cheat again. Trev reads the description of a random unseen ending. The Ordered Seasons. When setting out to govern Valdara, you put the rule of law first, to the detriment of all other ideals. While there is something to be said for clarity of purpose, this otherwise commendable dedication to civic order made your reign a bit one-dimensional. When your opponents sought your downfall, your predictable priorities made you easy to manipulate, and the ordered seasons of your rule did not survive much longer than the seasons of exigency they preceded. This was ending number 1, with a score of 12 points. Let's see. One of these endings involves being kind of an evil bastard, but also maximizing the people's happiness. You want to get into arena sports, you need to have low values and happiness and education. I kind of like just going about this way. The anarchist seasons. When you make the law, it goes without saying that you can throw out laws that no longer suit your purposes. You took this line of thought to its logical conclusion. No laws other than your own whims. Anything goes unless it doesn't. The Valdaran people may not have mustered any opposition to this, but your own court made the question moot. With no taste for your mercurial approach to governance, the Valdaran nobility had you summarily replaced. Your reign may have been a short one, but at least you avoided many worse outcomes. This was ending number 27 with a score of 31 points. The Vengeful Age. You were ruthless, and you taught the people to be ruthless as well. No threat, no slight, no whispered insult was too minor to ignore, and escalation to violence and murder soon followed. Your reign was a time of feuding families and long-held grudges. Despite the grim atmosphere, it was an age of great civic pride, even if the only clear winners were the gravediggers. This was ending number 11, with a score of 22 points. Trev reviews your endings. Here's some info about how this all works. You're missing the kleptocracy ending, aren't you? You need to get more autocratic. I thought we were plenty autocratic, so let's just cheat again. The Era of Scorched Marble. You turned the common people against the institutions of learning, and you turned the law itself against those who might normally enforce it. The unruly masses may be fickle, but you were ever in their favor, and more than one erstwhile lieutenant found himself chased out of town for attempting to re-establish a more civil society. The mob would someday grow tired of your charismatic autocracy and the squalor it had resigned them to, but detailed records of what would transpire are notoriously scarce. This was ending number 18 with a score of 11 points. For one of the endings you're missing, you need to maximize stability. That means avoid paths that increase freedom and paths that increase education. Avoid freedom, avoid education. That's blue and red. So we can take neither. We take green. We take white. We take neither. We take green. We take black. We take white. We take black. And neither. And neither. The Era of Walls Ascending. The city has endured. You fortified it. You reinforced the gates. You bricked up the windows. Wherever you saw or imagined a threat, you stamped it out, and the city has achieved stability. It has even grown. It has not flourished, exactly. This would require vibrancy and creativity and inspiration. The Era of Walls Ascending is not an era of inspiration, for inspiration is not necessary for stability. The city is not inspired. Regardless, the city has endured. This was ending number 23 with a score of 2404 points. We cheat again. The Slash and Burn seasons. Were you aiming to start an industrial revolution? It's an admirable goal, but prioritizing industry over the health and happiness of your city can backfire, as it did in this case. You had barely embarked on your journey of civic development at the expense of the outlying landscape when you were laid low by illness. It might seem unfair, but that's life. This was ending number 26 with a score of 28 points. Time for another clue, I think. There may be 10 different crises, but each crisis is an opportunity to choose between two competing values, and there are 5 different values in total. To get the best outcome, you need to keep all 5 values in relative balance. Saying this, he prepares a new tally for another round of crisis evaluations. Let's see. We can just go ahead and cheat again. The banner-crossed era. Pour enough effort into bread and circus, and your society will become one of bakers and entertainers. So it went with Valdara. Your changes brought the city into a state of continuous festival, in which it became a monument to competition and to camaraderie and to the feast and celebration of both. Putting so much effort into the performance of prosperity left you poorly positioned against external plotting, and it's unclear just how much of your reign was genuine and how much was a performance at the behest of your puppet masters. This was ending number 19 with a score of 9 points. You catch a glimpse of a fly in the stairwell. The Frightful Age. After the Exigent seasons, your rule ushered in the long darkness of the Frightful Age. The bleak lives of the Valdaran commoners could only improve if they turned informant, reporting one another for treacheries real and imagined. Your guile and ruthlessness had served you well during the crises, and now your control over the city was absolute. This was ending number 8, with a score of 19 points. Trev yawns for a moment as he marks down your ending. Since I'm presenting you the paths in a random order, you can get a bunch of endings by just taking the first path in each crisis and seeing what happens. Oh yeah? Take green. Take black. I'm not sure all of these endings really follow from the choices that you've made. Like, there are at least 3 or 4 different outcomes where you're some kind of tyrant, and it feels really arbitrary that some of those have your rule last for decades, while others see you deposed within a year or two. Don't know how I feel about that. Take blue, take white, take red, take black, take red, take white, take red. Looks like you got the Seasons of Lawlessness ending again. Yeah, see, that plan works fine if you haven't already gotten a bunch of endings, but once you have, it seems faster just to cheat. The Seasons of Selflessness. The people of Aldera had many demands: alms for the poor, favors for the wealthy, books for the learned, celebrations for the bored. You gave at every opportunity, and in the end you left nothing for yourself. You ultimately had to give your position to your successor after only a few seasons of prosperity, but you would spend years afterward as the best-fed and most beloved pauper in the city. This was ending number 29 with a score of 1149 points. I'm getting kind of tired, but don't let that stop you. You haven't yet gotten the ending in which you balance learning with the law. Well, we can try. The Age of the Shattered Wheel. You established the primacy of the militant hero, and to exalt the skills of martial prowess, Valdara, under your rule, put the arena first. Valdaran seasons came to revolve around marches and demonstrations, contests of strength, the rise and fall of gladiators, but above all, the racing of chariots, whose wreckage defined the image of the era. The common people lived in ignorant squalor, but how better to whet their thirst for the greatness? To lift themselves above their peers. This age of athletic triumph is only somewhat dimmed by the declining years of famine and plague that would eventually follow. This was ending number 21 with a score of 7 points. Trev pauses for a moment. Thank you for humoring me. You've probably been bored for a while now, huh? I think I've seen enough, if you're ready to leave, but I'm perfectly willing to keep going. So that is the sign that you can now finish the game. You've won, essentially. When you've gotten 21 endings, that's possible 33. That's like less than 2/3 of the way through. This game structure, I think, does not work very well. I think this is because like I'm pretty checked out here. I'm just going through this mechanically, especially when we are cheating for half of these. The Hungry Age. Your rule brought about the Hungry Age. Considered a kleptocracy, yours was a society divided between the haves and the have-nots, and you yourself were always foremost among the haves. Was it hard to enjoy your riches when you had to constantly quash anarchist uprisings? Apparently not, as this state of affairs lasted for decades. This was ending number 7 with a score of 18 points. Trev marks down your ending. Have you tried just minimizing learning yet and leaving everything else the same? It looks like you haven't. The Golden Century of Valdaran Autonomy. Trev says aloud, somehow you found the perfect balance. You enforced the law, yet you were merciful. You held on to power, but you were unpredictable. You gave everyone a little bit of what they wanted. No one was completely satisfied, but neither could they justify too much complaint. With this kind of canny leadership, it should be no surprise that your administration retained control of the city for more than 100 years, and you yourself were heralded as the most important leader of your era. Congratulations. This was ending number 31 with a score of 1 point. Trev yawns. Let's see if we can knock out a few in rapid succession. I'm going to just focus on giving you guidance for a bit. To that end, there are 4 events that have a path that contributes to law and order: the Pauper Riots, the Forbidden Workshop, the Famine, and the Squatters. I can do that even faster, Trev. Here is the Era of the Watchful Hand. Why bother with public police when secret police can do the same job more effectively? It's true that your agents enjoy unprecedented autonomy with a relative lack of oversight. Your critics would call this corruption if they weren't already jailed. Anarchist movements grow in response, but they are powerless to stop you from uprooting them before they do too much damage. This was ending number 16 with a score of 2 points. If you both educate the people and make them happy, you'll get a pretty good ending. The Eloquent Age. They called your reign the Eloquent Age. You studied the best way to build a society, and in that society you enshrined learning as the highest calling. Although your detractors would complain that the art and music of your era was mired in a formal rigidity that made it unexciting to study, none could deny the effectiveness of your leadership. This was ending number 6 with a score of 17 points. You can cause martial law to spiral out of control by favoring the law, as well as policies which encourage civil chaos. That would be a white-red ending. We'll see if that comes up here. The Joyful Seasons. This is one we were trying to get right at the beginning of the stream, and I completely missed it. You were a kind leader and merciful, and your people loved you for this. At what cost, though? The nobility who carried out your edicts chafed as your generosity came at their own expense, and they became all too eager to plot your downfall. When it finally came, the coup immortalized you as a true martyr of the common folk, but a martyr all the same. This was ending number 5, with a score of 15 points. One outcome requires you to drop both happiness and the security of your rule. We're going to cheer the Militant Era, that red-white one I was talking about. Faced with the unprecedented crises of the Exigent seasons, you ushered in the age of the citizen soldier. You raised levies and enacted martial law. This may have started as self-defense, but before long, your forces clashed with those of your like-minded neighbors, and the people found themselves caught in a constant quagmire of strike and counter-strike. The Militant Era continued in this way for the rest of your days. This was number 13, with a score of 23. We'll cheat. The Time of Paradox. You broke all the rules, including the rules about what constitutes a violation of the rules. Valdara is at once a flourishing metropolis and a devastated ruin. It is both a vassal state and an independent nation. Its people proclaim its utopia and dystopia in the same breath. Perhaps its future will settle into something a little more definite if you actually engage with the Exigent seasons, rather than just skipping straight to the end. This was ending number 0, with a score of 33 points. Yeah, that's the cheater ending. You can only get this by cheating. The Seasons of Faith. They say theocracy is an effective method of governing, but your fledgling church lacked the strength to prove this claim. While you established during the crises your ability to respond in the moment and take decisive action, your long-term planning was abysmal, so your apostles soon usurped your control over the city and left you as a powerless figurehead. This was ending number 28 with a score of 30 points. The Knife-Bound Era. The knife-bound era that followed the time of crisis is a difficult one for the average Valdaran citizen. The law was not on their side, and sentiment against low-born rabble was particularly harsh. If a commoner were to cross a soldier or a surgeon who felt they'd be of more use as a corpse, their best chance to avoid such a transformation depended on having a hidden weapon to fend off such attackers. Though it would not come for many years, the citizens' revolt was an obvious inevitability. This was ending number 17 with a score of 8 points. Trev runs a hand over his scalp as he marks down your ending. Feels like I'm going to get a headache soon. We're close, though. Avoid paths that would benefit either the populace at large or your own place at the top. The Era of the Golden Sun. Valdara, under your rule, became a place of equitable laws and joyful enlightenment. Your critics accused you of utopian idealism at the expense of individual liberty, but they couldn't dispute your fundamental success. Valdara's neighbors watched your prosperity with envious eyes, though, and bandits harassed your trade caravans with regularity. Still, you brought about a veritable golden age. Congratulations. This was ending number 20, with a score of 3 points. The Enlightened Age. I like this one. Now here's an unusual strategy. Make Valdara the smartest city in the world. During your Enlightened Age, free education is a right granted to all citizens, and the Valdaran Conservatory of Learning draws scholars from distant lands. These choices make Valdara look weak in the eyes of your more opportunistic neighbors, but your suzerain finds value in your dedication to the pursuit of knowledge, so your gamble pays off for many years. This was ending number 15 with a score of 21 points. There's only one ending we haven't found yet, and if you want to obtain that ending, well, a void pass that would benefit either the populace at large or your own place at the top. We may as well cheat again, unless you'd rather try to find this ending on your own. Yeah, we can go ahead and do that. This is not green, not black. So we take red, neither, white, white, neither, neither, blue, red, neither, blue. The era of the Lawblades. You played fast and loose with the edicts of the city, and Valdaran bureaucracy grew wild and tangled. Your rules contradicted one another. The magistrates who could best navigate this legal morass were those who bore both the signet, to barter favors in your name, and the sword, to cut through the obstacles of your justice, such as red tape. It wasn't the happiest of times, and your government was not the most effective, but after the era of the Lawblades ends, few periods of history will be as heavily romanticized by those who came out on top. This was ending number 24, with a score of 2,406 points. Holy smokes, Trev looks up at you. We reviewed every ending this quiz had to offer us. Leave. You may have seen every ending, but you had to cheat to get there. Well, what's the harm in that? We're all human. Trev closes the magazine and follows you out. Still, I would have been more impressed if you could have found every ending yourself without just having me read them to you. You've achieved an imperfect victory. You reviewed 33 endings out of a possible 33 before you embarked on your final path. Would you like to restart, restore a save game, read a not very amusing explanation of how this game came about, quit, or undo the last command? Amusing. Personality quizzes were a frequent feature of the early days of social media. One variety, based on a popular trading card game, would offer you a series of questions with 5 answers each, and it would then tell you which of the game's 5 colors you were. Then, an expansion to the game released in 2005 made 2 color pairings more popular, and suddenly all the quizzes with single color outcomes were passé, and all of the quiz outcomes were color pairs instead. I loved the idea of these quizzes, but I found their execution disappointing. They were too simple and too obvious. Giving 5 answers to each question made it trivial to predict how you were shaping your final result on a question-by-question basis, and a better quiz would make 4, 5, or even 0 color outcomes possible, yet rare. I believed that I could make such a quiz. Ultimately, this game was the result. It has exactly 10 questions in which I present each combination of 2 colors out of the 5. You may choose one of the 2 presented colors, or you may choose neither. Each selection impacts the rankings of the 32 endings. 5 single color endings, 10 2-color endings, 10 3-color endings, 5 4-color endings, the single 5-color ending, as well as the colorless ending. Once you've made every selection, I throw the lowest scoring endings in the trash and leave you with the ending that best fits the selections you made. A 33rd ending was added just for the cheaters, since I find 33 a more satisfying number than 32. If you'd like to see this for yourself in another playthrough, say a word or power, such as abracadabra, to open your mind's eye to the magic that underlies this story. Would you like to restart, restore a saved game, read a not very amusing explanation of how this game came about, quit, or undo this last command? I think we shall quit. So thank you so much for watching while we have played through this. This was the Exigent Seasons. I'm Jay Essen. Have a lovely day.